Last week, we began looking at a book by an Episcopal priest, professor, and author, Barbara Brown Taylor, called An Altar in the World, A Geography of Faith. Her central thesis in this book is that there is no way to God apart from real life in the real world. And so she works against the idea that there should be any distinctions between secular and sacred, the physical and the spiritual, the body and the soul. Each chapter of her book focuses on a certain practice and an exploration of how that practice might deepen our awareness of God and the holy. Last week, we began with the practice of waking up to God, or vision. This week, it is the practice of paying attention, or reverence. Reverence is profound, awed respect. Barbara Brown Taylor explains how her father taught her about reverence, waking her up to watch falling stars, driving her out to the country to witness the power of a fire, and teaching her the painstaking skill of taking care of a gun. From him, she says, I learned by example that reverence was the proper attitude of a small and curious human being in a vast and fascinating world of experience. It required frequent adventures, grand projects, honed skills, and feats of daring. Above all, it required close attention to the way things worked. It seems so simple, but it is a key practice of faith to pay attention rather than getting swept away by the busyness of life. When we pay attention, we see the miracles that are all around us. We are reminded of the beauty of human bodies and the intricacies of nature, and we find our place as created beings. Barbara Brown Taylor reminds us of a scene from the novel The Color Purple by Alice Walker. In it, the confident Shug explains her beliefs about God to Celie, an insecure and much abused woman, her friend. Listen, God love everything you love, and a mess of stuff you don't. But more than anything else, God love admiration. You saying God vain? I asked. Nah, she sighed. Not vain, just wanting to share a good thing. I think it pisses God off if you walk by the color purple in a field somewhere and don't notice it. Well, what'd it do when it pissed off? I asked. Oh, it makes something else. People think pleasing God is all God care about, but any fool living in the world can see it always trying to please us back. Shug's God is a God of relationship, reaching out to human beings with beauty and creativity and hoping to get noticed. A reverent life, a life of paying attention, is a life of discovering wonders even about yourself. It is a life that can then be marked by gratitude and joy. When Jesus said, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly, I think about that deeper, richer life. Not just an existence, however comfortable, but a life of noticing the amazing nature of the created universe and our part in it. This Sunday, the fourth Sunday of Easter, is known as Good Shepherd Sunday because each year in our 3-year lectionary cycle, there's a passage given to us from the 10th chapter of the Gospel of John, where Jesus talks about himself as a shepherd. This year is year A, and we have the first 10 verses where Jesus claims his role as both the shepherd that guides the sheep and the gate that protects them when they are safely in the sheepfold. Jesus sets up two contrasting images between the shepherd and the stranger, and between the thief and the gate. In the first pairing, the sheep are very wise, and it feels a bit like Jesus is describing how the sheep should behave rather than perhaps the way they actually do. These sheep pay attention. They can discern the difference between their shepherd's voice and the voice of a stranger. And they know how to run from the stranger and run to the shepherd. In Jesus' second attempt to be clear, he contrasts the thief with himself, the gate. The thief, he says, comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. This contrast is really helpful. It teaches us how we are to recognize the shepherd who has the sheep's best interests at heart. One voice comes to kill, one comes to bring life. One destroys and steals, the other brings abundance. How can we figure out which is which when we are listening to a multitude of voices and messages all the time, and most are trying to tell us that they have our best interests at heart? Whether it is the voice of an advertisement, or our boss or work colleague, a parent or sibling, a televangelist or a talk show host, our own inner voice, or our partner or best friends. How can we discern between the voice that speaks as the Good Shepherd would to grant abundant life, or the voice of the stranger that steals and hurts? I believe it starts with paying attention. Not just to the beauty of creation, which can be a delightful task and easier to take on, we also need to learn to be reverent toward ourselves and other human beings, a much harder task. You may find one of those easier than the others. Is it harder for you to pay attention to your own needs or to bear witness to the needs of others? For some of us, we are practiced at looking at and listening to others, even strangers. We can imagine the grocery store clerk has a full and rich life. And perhaps that person who cut us off on the road might be having a hard day, maybe even dealing with the illness of a loved one. We might not always choose compassion when encountering others, but some of us were at least taught to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. What can be more difficult, especially for women, is to grant ourselves the same compassion and reverence as we would give another. And yet, we too are children of God. If we are to have abundant life, we must also listen to ourselves, to the worries on our minds and the cries of our hearts, to the wisdom of our bodies, their warnings and their pains and pleasures. Barbara Brown Taylor advises us to pay attention to the miracle of our own bodies, to listen to our breathing and feel our heartbeat, to take 20 minutes to draw our own hand, or to look at our skin and pay attention to the scars and the freckles, the changes that a lifetime makes on a body. God is here too. Paying attention takes time. Like Moses stepping aside to look more closely at the burning bush, or like Jesus stopping to ask who in the crowd touched him. Paying attention disrupts our normal routine. But maybe that's what makes it a good place to start. as we have already had our normal routines disrupted. And as we spend more time alone and more time at home, perhaps we can encourage ourselves to slow down and pay attention. Adopt an attitude of reverence towards our bodies, our homes, our pets, our friends. Pay deeper attention to what we eat, to where we buy, the things we wear and use, to how we spend our time and money. And to ask ourselves those questions about whether our choices are truly leading us toward abundant life or away from it. These questions work best with specifics and with knowledge. Knowledge of the world and knowledge of self. What do we need? And what do we want? And what does it cost us or others to get it? If we truly listen to and honor our heart's yearning and our body's wisdom, I imagine we might buy less and reach out more. I want to end with a poem by Mary Oliver that I shared a year ago on one of our Creation Sundays. I love this poem because in it Oliver demonstrates what it means to love something specifically, in her case, a grasshopper. It's called The Summer Day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Every action can become a sacrament if we pay enough attention to it. As we become fully intentional, open ourselves to experience the moment fully with all our senses and with gratitude for what part of the experience is a gift, we begin to practice holy reverence. And God is not only present, but paid attention to. May it be so for you and for me. Amen. I invite you to sing with me a song from More Voices, number 126, Are You a Shepherd?